Oh, man. I guess, before we do anything else, it's good to see you again, Christian. How are you today? How was your week?
It was, first of all, great to see you as well. My week has been pretty good. The weather is getting hot again. So this summer has been weird on the East Coast. It's either raining and cold or really hot and humid. There's no in between here.
Sounds really fun. Sounds great.
But yeah, but the week's been good. How about you? How's your week going?
Good, can't complain that it's ending with a Friday early afternoon, hanging out with you and enjoying a beer. And we finally got rain for the first time in probably like 2 months. So
congrats.
That was great. Great feeling, never have I wished for rain as much as I have this summer. So
it's really funny. I wish we could give you some of ours, because we have too
Seriously,
much.
send it my way. Anybody at home who has some rain, please feel free to send it to Portland, Oregon. We'll gladly accept it.
In other words, we call that water. Please send water.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you drinking today?
All right, so I am drinking a Vermont beer. It's called Zero Gravity. They are out of Burlington, Vermont. I've actually been there a couple times. They're attached to the American Flatbread Pizzeria in Burlington. Have you been there, RJ?
I have not been. I've been to Vermont a bunch, and I've been to a lot of breweries in Vermont. I've never been to this one.
Well, the best part of it is it's attached to that pizzeria, like I said, and they make wood-fired pizza that is just incredible. So I highly recommend going up there. Nothing like beer and pizza to put you to sleep. What are you drinking this week?
Well, since it's early afternoon here out in Oregon, I had to keep it light. So I have a Czech-style Pilsner from Wayfinder Brewing, which is right here in Portland, Oregon. So after deviating to California briefly once here, I'm back right in the city limits of Portland for this week.
But what's our topic this week? I know you said it off the top, but let's hear it again.
All right. Yes. All right, Christian. So, the NHL draft wasn't too long ago, and it got me thinking, it got draft on the brain. And so each year there's like excitement about what a player can be. You hear projections and get all worked up. And yet I kind of think there's beauty in the fact that like some greatly exceed the expectations, others meet them, and others absolutely completely miss the expectations that have been applied to them.
For sure.
So, so this year we select Fabian Liesel with the 21st pick in the first round, and suddenly we both now know a bunch about an 18-year-old kid from Sweden who actually might never play an NHL game.
But from what I hear, he's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, I'm sure they said that about every one of these people I'm about to talk about, and not all of them turn out to be pretty good.
Well, I think about, too, players like Patrice Bergeron, who went nowhere near the first round and turned out incredible. Or, since, I'm from New England, Tom Brady is the best example of that. So you never know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is not a ticket to success by just being a first rounder, but, it's a decent odds because there's a lot of talent that goes in these first rounds over history. So, and those first round picks come with a lot of pressure. Like, you're expected to succeed. You really you better make the NHL if you're a first round pick. Whereas if you're a last round pick, and you just play in the AHL, it's like, hey, good job, buddy.
Right.
So there's that different level of expectation that comes with it. And so it got me thinking, how have our first round picks from the past turned out? And did they meet expectations, exceed them, fail them? Realizing that we really can't go through every single first round pick the Bruins have had in an episode or multiple episodes of this podcast, I thought maybe we can up the ante, go with the people that are under even more pressure to become that next big thing, and look at top 10 picks. So here we are. Top 10 picks from the Bruins in the NHL drafts. Now, if you're picking the top 10, you're expected to become a difference maker to star in the NHL. Probably even more than difference maker. But as with any other pick, though, there's plenty of misses along the way, and man, did I find some in researching this. So, but when the draft first started, Christian, there were only 6 teams, so there wasn't exactly. It wasn't like today, where if you're a top 10 pick, you're like, out of 30 picks for a top 10, that's big time. Like, you could be in the second round and be a top 10 pick back then.
Right.
But also on top of that, at first, when the draft first started in the 60s, the clubs, the NHL teams had direct affiliations with junior hockey teams. So you weren't getting your main talent from the draft. They were already in your junior team. The draft was for like the random stragglers who maybe slipped through the cracks and you wanted to bring into your organization. So if you look at the first years of the draft, no big names.
So in other words, it's almost like the opposite of now. Now the best players come out of the draft. Generally, the undrafted players are not necessarily as good.
Yeah. Where back then the talent pipeline came from within. You had your affiliated junior club that went to your affiliated minor league, whatever, and so those players came up from within and you did not go draft them. And so in part because of that and because there just weren't that many picks, as there weren't that many teams, that's how I decided on 1972. That is when the draft reached 16 picks. So now, it's still the majority of the picks are top 10, but you're starting to get towards a number where you're in the front 2/3 of that first round. And it also was really a case where talent was starting to really come through the draft at that point. They ended the affiliation with the junior clubs. The talent had to kind of come through the draft. And so you start to see bigger names coming out. And so that's how we ended up in 1972. Does that sound good?
Sounds great to me.
That makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, makes total sense.
We make our own rules, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Now, it would have been easy to go like chronologically and like the oldest draft pick to the youngest or whatnot, but I didn't want to do it that way. Today we're going to actually go by pick number in descending order.
Okay.
So like every number 10 pick that we've had, every 9th pick that we've had, and so on until we get to our number 1 picks that we've had. And so, Christian, you got a little like homework during this. I want you to write down these players, keep track of them, and like I offer up some stats and how they did. Because at the end, I want you to sort of redraft or reorder our selections from best NHL player to worst of how we drafted.
Okay, next week I had to step up my game here because you're doing a lot.
I just thought it would be fun to you always see those if this draft was redone, how would it go? And so
we do. We play games of what if on this podcast.
Yeah, and there's going to be plenty of that today because, man, there's a lot of picks where what if?
What if? I can think of some already, but let's do it.
Let's hop in. Okay. Actually, who's not on the list? Probably the best Bruins draft pick of all time when it comes to the value you got for the pick, at least. I'm not saying best player ever. Best value for where they were selected. This person's not on the list, so they weren't a top 10 pick. They were deep in the draft somewhere, and we picked them up, and they turned out to be a good player.
Well, I mean, the obvious one for me is who I said before, Patrice Bergeron.
So he was a second-round pick, I think, though?
Second or third round. He was pretty far down.
This person is much farther down in the draft.
Much farther. Okay, what era are we talking about? Just a general era.
Okay, so it was the 166th pick in the 1984 draft.
166th pick in the 1984 draft. 1984...
8th round.
8th round, 1984. Who played? Adam Oates. I don't know.
Don Sweeney.
Don Sweeney, all right.
Our current GM is probably one of the best picks we've ever had in terms of value. We got him in the 8th round of that draft. Out of what school? Do you know?
Oh, a school. This players went to college. He's American, first of all? Did I not know this?
I don't think he's American, but he did go to a school in America.
Okay. I'm going to guess either UVM or Michigan?
Harvard. Don Sweeney played 4 years at Harvard, was drafted in the 8th round by the Boston Bruins, and went on to play 1,115 NHL games, 1,052 of those with the Boston Bruins.
Wow. Poor guy had to play for Harvard.
Yeah, Don Sweeney had a really long career. He was a really solid player. And so best value, that's he didn't pass other people that we drafted necessarily in points and whatever, but if you're picking somebody in the 8th round and they give you 1,000 games, great pick.
Right. Who knew there were even 8 rounds in the draft?
Right. Okay, so yes, enough about the sleepers, and just let's dive in the top 10 picks.
All right.
Funny enough, since 1972, we haven't ever had the 10th pick. So we actually move right on to number 9.
Number 9?
We've actually picked 9th 2 times in the past 49 years. Happen to know either of them offhand?
No idea.
Okay, you should, because one is Dougie Hamilton. So
wow.
Dougie went 9th in the 2011 draft, directly after Sean Couturier.
Another great player.
Yeah, the number 1 pick that year was Nugent Hopkins.
Ryan Nugent Hopkins. I don't know. Was he worthy of the number 1 pick that year? Probably not.
Yeah, he didn't exactly turn into, you expect a number 1 pick to turn elite, right?
And I believe that would be one of Edmonton's 20,000 first overall picks they took in the last decade. Yeah.
We actually will talk about another one later on in this episode.
It's funny. Dougie Hamilton is a great player. I don't know if he liked playing in Boston, but he's still a great player.
Absolutely. He turned into a really, really good defenseman. He was a product of the Niagara Ice Dogs when we picked him up. And he made his NHL debut for the Bruins on January 19th, 2013 against the New York Rangers. He's gone on, as you mentioned, to have a really solid career. He's amassed 607 games played. By the way, most of these numbers are like totals are regular season games played.
Okay.
607 games played, 341 points over the course of 9 seasons.
Wow.
So I think that's a tip of the cap to Peter Chiarelli there with a solid pick who now he's not with the team still, but he's still, performing at a high level and seems like he's going to have a pretty long career. What do you think?
I mean, I just can't believe that it's already been 600 plus games for him. Like, I feel like he was drafted yesterday.
Yeah.
And I really like Dougie Hamilton as a player. I don't know much about his personality. He's kind of hated now in Boston. I saw the Bruins play the Hurricanes in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2019, and the fans, they were, what's the word? Merciless? Is that the word?
Yeah, that works.
They were very mean to him. He also got a number of penalties, which I think resulted in power play goals. So, but Dougie Hamilton is a great player.
Okay. Looking at the picks that were after him, you see some names you recognize, but people that I don't think you could easily say are much better than Dougie Hamilton. Maybe similar level. You got like a JT Miller is there. Not any huge names that came after him. So
2011. That's crazy. It's been 10 years.
Yeah. Yes, sir. All right. So now for the other number 9 pick, we go back to the summer of 1995. So Harry Sinden was in his 23rd year of being Bruins GM, and he decided to pick one Kyle Mclaren.
Which we are familiar with him from episode 1.
That is correct. He's been in an episode of the podcast already. In a quick aside, the number 1 pick that year was a guy by the name of Brian Barrard, a defenseman from Woonsocket, Rhode Island, who played at the legendary Mount St. Charles.
I am familiar. I remember that name very well.
Had to get the roadie mention in there. There's no other reason for that. He didn't have like an amazing NHL career, just, Rhode Island.
Yeah. Wait, did you say he was a number 1 pick? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea. Good for Mount St. Charles.
He had some injuries. He had like an eye injury, I guess, I believe, if I remember reading. And so, you'll see from this, luck is everything. In a player's career, but in the draft more so, it is complete luck.
Well, I often say hockey is a game of luck. The puck can bounce either way.
And you'll see that we've gotten lucky sometimes in the draft, and we've gotten terribly unlucky. Now, so Mclaren was coming off a solid season for the Tacoma Rockets in the WHL. He's a big forward. He's 6'4". He's over 200 pounds. He sort of fits that Bruins prototype, stereotype, whatever you want to call it, of a big bruising forward. And Kyle went on to have a solid NHL career. He appeared in 719 games, racked up 207 points. The only problem is, in my eyes, with the 11th pick in that same draft, the Dallas Stars selected someone by the name of Jerome Mcginla.
Who? Yeah, you forget Jerome was drafted by Dallas, huh? Did he ever play a game there?
Did not, no. He started with the Flames and was there until late in his career. He started to hop around to try to win something.
Yep, I did a Clawing Through History video on Mcginla and the crazy trade from the Flames to the Penguins, almost Bruins at that time.
Ooh, we got to check that one out as we just promo our past content here. I like that.
That is funny, though. I mean, I think Mcginla would have been a better pick in that draft.
Yes. And that's, there's a fun what if to play out, right? Like putting a Hall of Famer on the Bruins and seeing how things turn out differently.
I mean, when he did come to Boston, he was older, but he was still really good for the Bruins. So imagine him in his prime on the Bruins.
Yeah. Like, it's a whole other, worthy of a whole other episode, but like, by his third season, he was in a really becoming the Jerome Mcginla we all know and reaching that level. And the Bruins were a playoff team that lost in the second round. Kyle McLaren that year scored like 20 points. Mcginla had
I got it right here.
2, 3, 4 times that.
Are we talking 1997? He had 50 points.
We are talking about 98, 99.
32 points for Mcginla in 98, 90. Nope. Yes. Wait. Sorry. 51 points for Mcginla in 98, 99. Compared to Kyle McLaren's 20-something points.
24.
24 points.
So he basically would have doubled the offensive production there. So now in the playoffs, McLaren had 3 points. So, you could play some interesting what ifs, but that's like a whole other show. We could go down many a rabbit hole. So we'll leave it there.
Okay.
So we'll move on to our number 8 picks. We've actually selected in that spot 4 times since 72. And that is the most of any slot in the top 10. And we have seen a very big variance in degrees of success with our 8th picks in the draft. I'll just put it that way.
All right.
So we'll start on the not-so-great side of our number 8 picks. First draft we'll look at is 2007. It's Peter Chiarelli's second as Bruins GM. Patrick Kane goes number 1 that year. And it's a draft just loaded with talent. So we get on the clock, and we select center Zach Hamill.
Oh, no.
You actually may remember this guy because he played like 250 games for the P Bruins over the years. Do you remember him?
Of course I remember Zach Hamill. But yeah, I remember Zach Hamill pretty well. I think he had a few games up in Boston, right?
The key word is a few. Because the fact that he played the fact that he played like 250 games for the Providence Bruins kind of tells you a little bit about maybe how his NHL career would go.
Yep.
Which he sadly only appeared in the league 20 times, registering 4 points.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of players. I mean, there's another example like when Chris Bork played for Boston. He was not great, but then he would dominate down the AHL. There's so many players that can do so well in the American Hockey League, but it's obviously a totally different animal when you get up to the big leagues.
Yep, absolutely. So, he was most recently playing in the German second division. He kind of bounced around to AHL, went overseas, been playing there. So he is in his 30s now, but I think last season played in the German second division. But this is another case of what could have been for the Bruins. Players such as Logan Couture, Ryan McDonough, Kevin Shattenkirk, and Max Pacioretty were all selected later on in that first round.
So a lot of those players the Bruins have been linked to over the years as well. I know Ryan McDonough, we were linked to him before he went to Tampa. Not Max Pacioretty. I don't think he would come here based off past history. And then who was the last player you just said?
There's Logan Couture.
And there was one more?
Kevin Shattenkirk.
Kevin Shattenkirk. We were linked to him like 3-4 trade deadlines in a row.
Really?
Yeah. Never really panned out.
Yeah? We should have just probably drafted one of them, huh?
Yeah, we should have. Hindsight is 2020 is the theme of this podcast.
That's in my script for later on in this episode.
Spoiler.
No, yeah. And yeah, it's from one bust to another here, folks. Okay, so with our 8th pick from the 1996 draft, Harry Sinden, once again, he drafted a lot. He was there forever.
Yep.
He clearly had a type because he picked another 6'4" guy weighing over 200 pounds. Defenseman Jonathan Aitken. Aitken.
We mentioned him, I think, as well in the Cam Neely episode.
Yes. And you'll notice we talk about that a little bit later on as well.
Okay.
Yes. So he was a product of the Medicine Hat Tigers of the Western Hockey League. And he ended up playing... I laugh because of Medicine Hat Tigers.
That's a quaint name.
That's a fun name. He ended up playing in 44 NHL games and registering 1 point. To be fair to Sinden, this does look like a pretty light draft with none of the top 20 picks that year making an all-star team. But still, Marco Sturm, Danny Briere, they went later on in round 1, while some guy named Zdeno Chara went 56th overall to the New York Islanders that year.
It's funny, couple future Bruins there, Sturm, Chara.
That's right. Yep.
And Briere was a solid player. He played for a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get some good people out there, but yeah, there's no talent from that draft that came out and you're like, it seemed like a weak draft.
Yeah.
Basically.
Would I know who the first overall pick was? Is it someone we know?
The number 1 pick was Chris Phillips.
I think I know that name.
Number 2 was Andre Jugin.
Ah, of course.
Number 3, Jean-Pierre Dumont.
Ah, French Canadians.
Yeah, nobody that made an all-star team until Marco Sturm, Danny Briere. Then you got Chara, Tom Potey in round 3, Mark Parrish. But yeah, Pavel Kubina, round 7. And then Tomas Kaberle, round 8.
The man that never shot the puck.
I think that's enough of the doom and gloom. We've actually selected some pretty good players at number 8. And one of those being good old Sergei Samsonov.
My guy.
Yes. And we will talk more about the 97 draft later, as we did have the number 1 pick that year. But for now, we will stick with just talking about Sergei. He came highly touted after a stellar season with the Detroit Vipers of the IHL. He flew out of the gates in the NHL. He won the Calder Trophy for Best Rookie in 97-98. But after a few really good years, including a 75-pointer in 2000-2001, his production began to fall off. By the end of his career, he played in nearly 900 regular season games while racking up 571 points. Despite the quality career, one has to wish the Bees went with the 12th pick in that draft, now Hall of Famer Marion Hosa.
Oh, man. All right, funny story about Marion Hosa, and you probably know this. Hosa was with the Penguins in 2008 in the Stanley Cup Final. He loses to the Red Wings. The next year, 2009, he goes to the Red Wings, is back in the Stanley Cup Final, and he loses to the Penguins.
That's what you get for not being loyal, Hosa. Yeah, a case where, we got a really good player for us that, he's good for a while. 75 points is a really good total for a year, but yeah, you take the Hall of Famer instead, right?
Yeah. But at first, it looks like it worked out. I mean, Calder winner, Sergei Samsonov. I had no idea that him and Hosa were the same age.
Right, exactly. Well, yeah, I know Sergei was a teenager. I don't know how old Hosa was in that draft, but similar age at the very least, right?
Yeah.
All right, so more on the 97 draft later, but to finish up with our number 8 picks of all time, or since 1972, our final selection from the number 8 spot is a Bruin legend and Hockey Hall of Famer. Do you have any guesses who we picked number 8, who is now in the Hall of Fame?
In the 19...
You want a decade? You want a year range? What do you want?
Yeah, decade. Let's do decade. Make it harder.
He was picked in the 1970s.
Ray Bork.
All right. There you go, buddy.
I knew I'd get one eventually.
Yes, the one and only Raymond Bork was selected by the Bruins 8th overall in the 1979 draft.
Colorado Avalanche legend, Mr. Raymond Bork.
So this one was interesting. There's a few different stories out there about how the Bruins came to select the future Hall of Famer. And so Harry Sinden claims he wanted Bork, but the scouts would have rathered defenseman Keith Brown. Other stories you find about the draft actually claim that even Sinden rathered Brown and that the Bruins just stumbled upon Bork. So what ended up happening, the Blackhawks took Keith Brown with the 7th pick. So it made things much easier because the scouts wanted Brown, but then he was off the board. The story goes that, well, according to Sinden, he wanted Bork, and so when it came to that pick, they went with Bork, and the rest is history. Other places say that on draft night, the Bruins were scrambling because they wanted Keith Brown. He goes the pick before, and they're shit. Who do we pick? And they're scrambling, whatever. They're on the phone. I think they even took like a pause or something, apparently. And then they drafted Ray Bork. And so depending on who you believe, they almost didn't draft Ray. They kind of panicked maybe and picked Ray and hoped it worked out. And
so they panic drafted one of the greatest defensemen in the history of the game.
According to one account of the evening on the internet, written by a journalist in Canada from 2012, yes, they panicked into picking Ray Bork.
Is this 78 or 79?
79.
79. Let's say Bobby Orr never gets hurt. They'd play a few seasons together.
That'd be unbelievable.
Because I think Bobby Orr retired in 78 from Chicago, and he was young. I don't know if he was like even 30 yet.
If he does what a lot of defensemen do and plays into their like late 30s and stuff, we could have had like the mid 80s with Bobby Orr and Ray Bork.
I mean, if he is like Chara, he would have been playing when you were born.
That is true. Yes, he would have been playing when I was born.
Because you're significantly older than me. So
yes, yeah. I'm a very old man. Yes.
That's crazy though. A panic pick turns into Ray Bork.
Oh man, yeah. Bork, of course, he still holds records for most goals, assists, points by a defenseman. Brown went on to have a very solid NHL career. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, way better than you or I or could ever be, right? I'm not trashing him, but nothing like one of the greatest Bruins to ever play the game. So we win that one.
I think so.
All right. You got everything written down, the picks so far?
Oh my God, I totally forgot about that whole thing.
You're going to be the Bruins. You're going to panic draft people. This is unbelievable. We are now on to our only pick at number 7, which this player actually has the distinction of having the shortest NHL career on the list, sadly.
Poor guy.
So the year was 2000, and the player was Lars Johnson of Sweden. So we haven't always drafted good Swedes. The defenseman actually never played a game for the Bruins and only amassed 8 total NHL games with the Flyers in the 06-07 season. Now, if we had an earlier pick in that draft, we could have wound up with Rick DiPietro, Danny Heatley, Marion Gaborik, or Scott Hartnell. But while those guys were off the board at 7, another Swede was left on the board until the 7th round that year. Henrik Lundqvist went with the 205th pick in that draft.
Wow, 205. That's crazy.
Right? It shows, you just don't know. Nobody valued him above that, right? I don't know.
Well, you know the story of DiPietro, right? So DiPietro, I believe, was he drafted first overall that year? I think he was number 1.
Yeah, he was 1.
And I believe... this is correct, what I'm saying, I believe, that when he was an Islander, Mike Milbury was GM, they gave DiPietro a 15-year contract.
Yes.
Which may have just expired or might still be going, but DiPietro hasn't played in years. So the DiPietro thing didn't work out in the end.
In 2006, the team signed him to a groundbreaking 15-year contract. But... beginning in 2008, with a string of injuries limited him to 50 NHL appearances over the next 5 seasons.
You know how dumb it is to sign a goalie for a 15-year contract?
Yeah.
Or any player, really?
As a result of the buyout, they bought out his contract in 2013. As the result of the buyout, the Islanders will continue to pay him $1.5 million until the end of the 2028-29 season.
That's unbelievable. I think that was Mike Milbury, right? I think that was his doing.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's hilarious. But yeah, there's Lars Johnson, who in 2000, that's another pick by Harry Sinden.
This guy,
his name comes up a lot, and there's a lot of interesting, they sort of stumble upon Bork. We've had a bunch of sort of busts so far. Otherwise, maybe, take Dougie Hamilton and Sergei aside. But, we got an interesting little draft record so far here. Lars Johnson, he played mostly just in Sweden, stayed there, tried the NHL briefly, didn't work out, back to Sweden. That's it. So on to the 6th pick, which is another one we've only had once, and it was actually all the way back in 1973. The Bruins selected a center from the Quebec Remparts named Andre Savard, no relation to Mark. And he went on to play in actually nearly 800 regular season NHL games.
Wow.
But only 3 of those seasons were with the Black and Gold. So he made really his career elsewhere. But just 2 picks after us that draft, the Canadians took Bob Gainey, who went on to win the Selke 4 times and the Stanley Cup 5 times on his way to a spot in the Hockey Hall of Fame. So another case where very solid pick that didn't necessarily return too much for the Bruins, but very close after them is somebody who just on a different level.
Yeah, I think Bergeron might have just tied the Selke wins with Bob Gainey.
Okay, so now we're finally getting to the huge prizes here, the top 5 picks.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think what we'll see from when we're looking at the top 5 picks, it's a lot easier in most drafts to identify that really top talent, the first few picks, than what comes after that. So there's been a lot of hit and miss later on in these, sort of 6 through 10. That starts to change a little bit when we see 1 through 5 here. So the Bees only had number 5 once since 1972, and they used it to select Phil Kessel in 2006.
All right. Hot dog Phil Kessel.
And it was truly just stacked with talent. The top 5 picks in order were Erik Johnson, Jordan Stahl, Jonathan Toews, Nicklas Backstrom, Phil Kessel.
No misses there.
No. So as we're aware, and many listening, if there's anybody that actually listens to this, Kessel has produced a very good NHL career. We're talking over 1,100 regular season games, over 900 points. He's also picked up 2 Stanley Cups along the way, just with Pittsburgh and not the Bruins.
Yep.
So he played 3 seasons with the team before he was traded to Toronto for a first-round pick in 2010, which turned into someone we're going to talk about shortly.
I think I know who it is, but I won't spoil it.
Thank you. A second-round pick in 2010 and a first-round pick in 2011. We talked about him earlier, Dougie Hamilton.
I didn't realize, too, he was only here for 3 seasons. It felt like longer.
Yeah.
But I think he's kind of similar to Hamilton, where I don't think he loved playing here. I don't think he loved Toronto either, because I hear their media up there is intense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But, he won with Pittsburgh, and then I think he's with Arizona now, right? Arizona Coyotes?
Yes. Yep. He's with Arizona now. He's still going.
Still going, still good.
Yeah. He'll end up with, more than 1,000 points in regular season points, in his career. And so a really, really good NHL career, really good number 5 pick. But actually what happened in the 2006 draft outside of the Kessel selection was actually more important to the Bruins of the past 10 or 15 years. On draft day, we traded Andrew Raycroft to Toronto for Tuukka Rask. And we selected Brad Marchand in the 3rd round that year.
Yep, okay. Question. Before Chiarelli was technically drafting, we had Jeff Gorton as our acting GM, and he basically drafted all of our good players. He drafted Lucic, and I believe he drafted Marchand. I don't think Chiarelli was making those picks.
So they list Jeff Gorton as interim GM from March to May of 06.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 06 draft was held in June of 06.
Okay.
Now, was he still heavily involved? Maybe. Now this says interim general manager until July of 06. So
yep.
When you go to his actual page. So yes, this was Jeff Gorton making these moves in 06 draft.
Yep.
So Phil Kessel. So yeah, if I talk about Chiarelli, please delete that. But this was shout out to Jeff Gorton for drafting Phil Kessel, Milan Lucic, Brad Marchand, and at the same time trading Raycroft for Tuukka Rask.
Yep. Yeah. This is going to come up again in a future episode, by the way. Stay tuned.
I like this. So, oddly enough, we haven't had the fourth pick once since 1972. So, we just move right on to our only selection at the number 3 spot in the draft. And for that, we go back to the summer of 1987, Christian. You will definitely not remember it. Nor will I. We both weren't born.
Nope.
So, we were coming off of a season where we had actually made the playoffs, but lucky for us, we had a first-round pick courtesy of Vancouver. You know why.
I think I know who this is.
Yeah, you better. Because it was from the Cam Neely trade. And so with it, we selected a pod favorite, Glenn Wesley.
Mr. Glenn Wesley, who literally just stopped playing like in 2006 or 7 or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think 2006 or 7, yeah.
I said just stopped playing. Stopped playing a while ago, but still had a very long career.
Yes, like 20, 21 years. I say pod favorite because I think he's now been mentioned in every episode of the podcast. Like he just is always somehow finding his way into Bruins history.
We won a cup with Carolina, not with us.
Yes. Now, Wesley was coming off of some stellar seasons for the Portland Winterhawks of the WHL, my now local team. And he made an immediate contribution in 87-88, scoring some crucial goals in our Stanley Cup run that ended by being swept by Edmonton in the finals, where we talked about the blackout from that Stanley Cup finals.
It's all coming together now.
There we go. He went to the finals with us again in 1990. So he didn't win one with us, but he was part of those last teams that really got there until we did it in 2011. But he was ultimately traded to the Hartford Whalers for 3 picks that turned into, and we know this from the Cam Neely trade tree episode here, those 3 picks turned into Kyle Mclaren, Jonathan Aitken, and Sergei Samsonov.
It's great that this all comes together.
So, on the one hand, like, it's overall, in terms of just what the player did, it's a great pick by the Bruins. Wesley played nearly 1,500 regular season games over the course of his 20-plus year career. He finally won a cup with Carolina in 2006. But do we love what we got in the trade? I don't know. You know, we ended up drafting two guys that played 700 to 800 NHL games, and then a guy that barely, didn't really even play in the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, I love Samsonov for the nostalgia factor. Was in the long run, he didn't make a huge impact on the franchise. I think if I was a different age, I probably wouldn't even really remember him that well.
Right.
So.
Well, let's play another fun game of what if.
Yes.
Now, Wesley, of course, is a great pick at number 3 for what his career turned into. But do we perhaps wish that we had taken Joe Sakic with that pick instead of letting him fall to Quebec at 15?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Not only because he's a good player, also he's now GM of the Avalanche, who are an amazing team. So
there we go. I like that. That's the long view.
Yep.
All we're seeing from this podcast is that hindsight is absolutely 20/20.
Yes.
And there's a lot of talent that's been left on that draft board after we've picked in the top 10. Okay, so we're nearing the end. We are almost there. Up next is our only selection at number 2. It is the person we mentioned earlier, that was a result of the trade of Phil Kessel. Tyler Seguin.
Who?
Bruins fans, you'll no doubt remember, this pick and the ensuing season after it, going on to win the Stanley Cup. Now, this year, I don't know if you remember this, Christian, but there was like this 2-horse race from the prospects about who would go number 1. Do you remember this?
Well, I know who it is.
Right.
I believe he plays for us.
Exactly. Yes. It was a debate on who would go number 1 and who was a better prospect, and it was between Tyler Seguin and current Bruins left winger Taylor Hall. So it was essentially, it seemed like whoever the Oilers took number 1, the Bruins would just take the other guy. Simple. So Hall goes number 1, Seguin becomes a Bruin. Now, Tyler was, of course, part of that Stanley Cup winning team in 2011, as well as the Cup losing team in 2013. He was traded after that season, and some drama in the press, as I remember it, over some off-ice things and whatnot. So
Yep.
He has turned into like a 70 to 80 point a season player in Dallas. And as long as he can remain healthy or get back to full health, I know he's had some injuries recently. It looks like he's on his way to having a stellar career when it's all said and done. So, like, you made the right pick in that equation. 1, he's a stellar player. 2, there was 2 clear top prospects. You're going to take one of the 2 of those, right? Like,
Yeah.
simple as that. So, even, you could argue Taylor Hall has had he's had a 90 plus point season, which Seguin hasn't had, but Sagan's done it more consistently. Seguin year after year has done 70 or 80 consistently, whereas Hall's kind of had more fluctuation. So, we'll let that one continue to play out. There's still some years left on both of their legs, so we'll see how it ends up.
All right, let me just say this. I remember when Seguin was traded July 4th. I remember being 4th of July, 2013. They, a few months or weeks later, whatever, they had the Behind the Bee episode come out where it was all those guys in the room, all the Bruins management discussing Seguin and wondering, like, should they trade this guy? Like, is he going to be this great player? Yes, the answer was yes, and they decided to trade him. They're so dumb. It drives me insane that they traded him.
Yeah, it feels like classic Bruins. Like, does he work hard defensively or something? But it's like, well, if he gets 80 points a season, you can't just replace that. I don't know.
No, and I have to believe. I mean, also, sure, maybe he had off-ice issues, but he was like 19, 20 years old at the time.
Yeah.
He seems like a pretty good guy now. I don't know. I don't think Don Sweeney and Bruce Cassidy want him gone. This was like Julian, Chiarelli, Neely, these guys that were like more defensive-minded maybe. I don't know. But we should not have traded that guy. We have nobody left from that trade currently on our roster. And Louis Eriksson is in Vancouver, I think still. Or maybe he's somewhere else now. But he just never really panned out either. So, I don't know. That drives me crazy to this day.
I love it. I love getting that emotion out of it. Yeah, it was Louis Eriksson, Joe Morrow, Riley Smith, who ended up being good, but then he went to Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, it's a good player. He is.
So, not the best trade there in the end, it seems. All right, Christian, we have made it. We are at our 2 number 1 picks all time since 1972. You know one of them.
I do.
But I don't think you're going to know the first one we talk about.
Probably not.
Well, you'll know him. I don't think you'll know that he was a number 1 pick. We're going back to the 1982 NHL draft. The Bruins are picking number 1. There's some big name prospects on the board. But once again, our man Harry Sinden, he's sold on somebody. He's sold on a young defenseman. He's 6'4". What is it with Sinden and 6'4" guys?
He likes big, tough bruisers. Big Bad Bruins hockey.
His name's Gord Klusak,
Okay.
who is a NESN or was a NESN analyst for many years. I don't know if he still is because I haven't been able to see too much of NESN studio coverage. But for a long time, he was a Bruins like studio and analyst, and even might have did some color commentary and whatnot up there in Boston. He went number one, and unfortunately was plagued by knee injuries. So he did not have the NHL career that was expected of him. He ended up playing 300 regular season games, getting 123 points. He basically played 4 seasons for the Bruins, and one of them being where we went to the Stanley Cup in 87-88. So he had a good playoffs that time, and then from there he barely played. He had 3 games in 88-89, 8 games in 89-90, 2 games in 90-91. His knee just went, it was done. And so he had to retire. And really sad. It would be interesting to see how he fully panned out if he had a good full run at it. But obviously in hindsight again, you don't pick him number one.
I always wonder with injuries like that, if they had played in like a more modern era, if they could have gotten, the treatment and
better surgery, yeah.
Like Bobby Orr is the best example of that, but who knows?
Yep. Great question, great point. Looking back on that draft, you kind of look at some of the names. You got 3 Hockey Hall of Famers in the first round with Scott Stevens, Phil Housley, and Dave Andershock. In that hindsight, you probably wish you picked one of them with number one, but again, luck comes in and plays a factor.
Hold up really quick. Dave Andershock ended up playing for us in the 99-2000 season.
Always a Bruins connection, baby. I love it.
We got him. He won a cup
in the end.
He won a cup of Tampa Bay in 04.
Unreal. Yeah, Gord Klusak out of the Billings Bighorns of the WHL.
These names are ridiculous in these minor league teams.
Love it. Absolutely love it. His hometown is Climax, Saskatchewan.
Nice.
So that is our first number one pick. That's more of the, I don't want to call it a bust because it was one of those like really unlucky, but just didn't pan out the way a number one pick you would hope for. The next one, in the end, I think we can say certainly has. Christian, our other number one pick that the Bruins have had?
I think it's Mr. Joe Thornton.
That is correct. You know it. Mr. Joe Thornton, the number one pick in the 1997 NHL draft.
Still going strong.
Still playing. He's 42 years old and 6'4". So another Harry Sinden draft pick who's 6'4". This is unbelievable.
He's like 6'3", get out of here. 6'4". That's what I want.
It's only 6'4" up. Unbelievable. Man. So Bruins have the number one pick that year in addition to the number 8 pick, which was Sergei Samsonov. And it is an absolutely stacked draft. Like, unbelievable names. So number 1 is Joe Thornton with us, obviously. Number 2 is Patrick Marlowe. Number 3 is Olli Jokinen. Number 4 is Roberto Luongo. Then we've got Eric Brewer at 5. Samsonov goes at 8. Nick Boynton goes at number 9.
A Bruin.
Yes. And then you had Marion Hosa, who's already in the Hall of Fame, at 12. So, the first 5 picks of that draft are big time names. And isn't Marlowe still playing, or did he just retire?
He is still playing, I believe. He's gone back and forth between the Sharks, and then he, like Thornton, had a brief stint in Toronto and Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he went to Toronto, back to San Jose, to Pittsburgh, to San Jose.
I actually saw, this has nothing to do with Patrick Marlowe. If we're just talking about old players, I think maybe actually Marlowe is included in this. Chara is one of the only players left who has played against Wayne Gretzky. I guess Marlowe's in that list too, and Thornton.
Yeah, wow.
Pretty
I
crazy.
like that. That's when did Gretzky finally retire?
It's gotta
99?
be. Yeah. Huh. Ironic. His number's 99.
Yeah. So we're running out of time for the people that played with the great one there.
Yep.
Now, Joe Thornton, as we've talked about in this podcast before, he starts off a little sluggish in his first season with the Bruins. 55 games in the regular season, 7 points. Start to wonder, oh crap, do we miss on this kid? But it only gets better from there. 41 points next year, 60, 71, 68. And then in 02-03, he hits 101 points. And that's like when Joe Thornton becomes the Joe Thornton that we've seen pretty much ever since.
Yep.
And so he's with the Bruins. He gets traded. We've talked about that trade before. Goes to San Jose, and he racks up 92 points, 114, 96, and he has just kept going. And so now in the end, regular season, he has played 1,680 hockey games.
Wow. It's crazy.
Scored 1,529 points.
That's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, this guy is absolutely a Hall of Famer. As soon as he hangs up the skates, he is in the Hall of Fame. But, it's pretty interesting because we've been playing the what if game about if you drafted somebody else for a lot of these drafts. So we should do it with this one too, just for the due diligence. Patrick Marlowe, who went number 2, he's played in nearly 1,800 regular season games and scored just about 1,200 points in the NHL.
A lot of those with Thornton, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So you have really 2 guys at the top of the draft board there that you would have been happy, I think, picking either one of them with what they've turned into and produced in the NHL. But really, that's one where we've covered a decent amount of misses in our first round history. This was definitely a great pick by the Bruins, number 1 in 1997, Joe Thornton.
Yes, for sure.
So, Christian, that is all of our top 10 picks since 1972. I think it's 13 names, but fact check me if you have a different amount there.
I have 13.
Okay. So we've had 13 top 10 picks. We've gone through them all. And now I need you to draft them again.
Okay.
With your first pick of your Bruins top 10 picks, who are you drafting?
What's that little thing they play at the draft? Is it the NFL draft where it's like doom doo or whatever?
The little jingle when the pick is in?
Yeah. I don't think they do that in the NHL. But I am going with the first pick in the fantasy Clawing Through History draft. I select Raymond Bork.
Oh, all right. Well, I mean, yeah, you got to do it, right? Probably greatest defenseman of all time, Hall of Famer, Bruins legend who played here. How do you not go with Ray?
I don't know. You think he's the best defenseman of all time? Because I think he's not even the best defenseman in Bruins history.
Well, okay. Statistically, if he's got most goals, most assists, points,
yeah, that's true.
You can do the eyeball test, but I'm going to just go with the numbers here and say,
you're a numbers man. All right.
yeah, oh yeah, all about the data.
All right. I respect.
All right, number 2.
Okay, number 2 for the number 2 pick in the Clawing Through History draft. I'm going to go with Joe Thornton, number 2.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got to do it, right? Longevity, points, Hall of Famer.
And he's winning a cup with us.
All right, so number 3.
All right, this where it gets a little tougher. I feel like those were the easy ones.
Right, those are the 2 of the 13 that are big time hits. We did great with our top 10 pick. Amazing. Now it gets into more
Let me ask you a question though. Are we so in this world? They're in their prime, no injuries, right?
What I'm thinking is based off of how they perform in their career, and you're a GM, and you know how they're gonna perform over the next 5-10 years. Who do you want on your team? Okay. But yeah, I also will accept any reasoning. So if you're this person had one of the best seasons of all time, and other than that was hurt, but I would take him in his prime, so I want him. I'm fine with that. So however you want to do it.
I'm going to go... This is tough, but I'm going to go with Phil Kessel at number 3. I'm going with Phil Kessel. I think he doesn't seem to get hurt very often. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. He's consistent, great player. The most out of shape looking in shape guy I've ever seen in my life.
Hey, that's a skill in and of itself right there.
Exactly. So Phil Kessel, number 3.
Okay.
And if we're talking longevity, I'm saying that right? Longevity. For number 4, we're going to go with Glenn Wesley, our man Glenn Wesley.
There you go. Friend of the pod, who we've never talked to or met, but
someday, let me tell you.
Yes.
Number 5, we're going with Tyler Seguin.
There you go. Yep. I don't disagree with you at all yet. I'm with you.
Oh, good. I feel like I'm getting the easy ones out of the way. All right. Number 6, we are going to go with Dougie Hamilton.
Oh, teach me how to Dougie. Okay.
Number 6, Dougie Hamilton.
Ahead of Sergei.
Yeah, because we're talking longer career, more consistent player. I'm also not taking into account their position. So.
Yeah. You don't got to care. Pick all centers, whatever.
All right, cool.
It's a fantasy team. I don't care.
Number 7. Let's see. Number 7. We got to go with Samsonov, I guess. Number 7.
Yeah, you're starting to get into... It's going to start really thinning out after this.
It is. Number 8, we're going to go with Kyle Mclaren, I guess. Number 8.
Okay.
I'm just marking these down here. Number 9, we will go with... not great picks left. All right, let's do Andre Savard. Why not? Let's draft him at number 9.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Go with the 70s get.
Yeah. Number 9. Savard.
He had a decent career. He played for a while at least,
Yeah. Number 10, we're going with Gord Klusak. Is that how I say it? Is that right?
Yeah, Gord Klusak, yeah.
All right, Gord Klusak, number 10.
He looked to be like he was a good defender until he really got hurt. So before the knees would be a very solid defenseman on your team.
We're taking before the knees. Number 11. We're going to go with Atkin. Mr. Atkin.
Okay. And why?
Because Zach Hamill and Lars Johnson are left. So we're going to go with him at 11. We're going to take Zach Hamill at 12. And unfortunately, Lars will go last at 13. Because what'd you say? He played like no time in the NHL. So.
Yeah, like 8 games. Okay, so yeah, you going back through that kind of realize that there's like three very clear busts, right?
Yes, and then there's 3 very clear wins.
Yeah.
Bork,
3 or 4 probably.
4 probably. Yeah, Bork, Thornton, Kessel, Seguin, Hamilton. Those are all great.
And Wesley,
Wesley.
that dude. So, not so doom and gloom in the end, We definitely had some misses, but especially I think as I alluded to, as you get into that top 5, you really start to it makes your job easier. It seems.
Yeah. It's just funny though. Like you think about the players who are now the best players on the Bruins: Marchand, Bergeron, Pasta. I mean, none of them went in top 5. McAvoy didn't go in top 5. So you never know.
Yeah, exactly. They're all like second and third round, or like Pasta was a late first round, right? 25th.
Pasta, and I think McAvoy was a first round pick too.
Let's see here.
If I recall.
Pasta was 25th overall in 2014.
Yep.
McAvoy was 14th overall in 2016.
If there is a player that, this is not top 10 pick, but I always think about the 2015 draft where we drafted 3 players in a row. I think it was DeBrusk, Shannon, and Zaboral. Maybe those were the 3 players in a row. And below that was Matt Barzal, who is an elite player. So, again, what if?
Another another what could have been. I totally spaced on that fact from 2015 that we had 3 picks in a row.
Yeah, that's a big one. Well, this is great. This is a really cool topic.
You know, we can do another one where we just talk about like best Bruins draft picks of all time, because you got a lot of people going pretty far down the list here, pretty far down in the rounds in the pick number, who had very good careers. So maybe we can do that in the future.
Love it.
That is it for this week's episode of Clawing Through History. Now, don't forget to subscribe, drop a rating, wherever you get your podcasts, help us out. You can follow us on Twitter. The handle is @ClawingThroughHist. That's @Clawing, THRUHIST. Do you have an idea for an episode? Drop us a line at clawingthroughhistory@gmail.com. This show is produced and written by Christian Renzi and RJ DeMello. It's edited by Christian, so he officially does more work than I do. Our theme music is by Strip Mall, and until next time, go Bruins.